Well, hi there. This is Caleb Jones, and this is the Sovereign CEO podcast. And if you're watching the video version of this podcast, you can tell from the background that I am not in my normal environs. I am, unfortunately, in the collapsing USA for the next 80 days. I can only stay in the United States a max of 110 days a year or so. And so this year I am front loading all of that into the beginning of the year so that as of about April, I don't have to worry about coming back to the United States minus brief visits like for seminars and things like that. So this is my temporary American office. And today we're going to talk about niching, which is the most important concept in building a location-dependent Alpha 2.0 business. It is easily the most common question I get regarding business questions. Usually at least 40-50% of the time when people hire me for coaching or join one of my coaching programs, one or many of their questions revolves around finding a niche. And there is a lot of confusion about this. There's a lot of misunderstanding about this. It is difficult, as I've talked about in my courses and my books. Finding a narrow niche that you can service in your business is the hardest part of starting an Alpha 2.0 business. It's the hardest part. The good news is once you get there and it's correct, the rest is easy. So you're kind of front loading the difficulty when you start an Alpha 2.0 business because you're doing the hardest thing first, which is niche. And you are rewarded for this because most business owners, and I can tell you from experience, working with hundreds of business owners over the course of my business career as a business consultant and as an entrepreneur, don't pick a niche. They don't even think about a niche. They just say, I'm good at this, so I'm going to sell this, or I like this, so I'm going to sell that. They don't think in terms of branding or niche or positioning or any of that stuff. And that's why they fail. So it's kind of important. And I won't go through all the benefits. Well, actually, maybe I should. Maybe I should go through the benefits of niching really quick. When you niche your business, when you offer your product, service, or information or combination thereof to a very narrow niche, it allows you to make higher income on lower work. It allows you to charge more on your prices. It allows you to more easily target your niche in terms of marketing. It gets you more word of mouth business. You are more quickly perceived as an expert. What else? I'm forgetting a few benefits. It's just benefit. The higher margin in terms of your product services you're going to sell. It's just win all over the place. And the Alpha 2.0 business structure means low work, high income. And so you want to do everything in your power to ensure that you have higher income on lower work. And one of the key ways to do that is by narrowly niching. And so in this podcast, I'm going to address some of the questions and concerns I've gotten around this and some of the objections I've gotten around this to clear up some confusions because I know a lot of you are wrestling with this. And I want to help you with this because this is kind of important. So first off, top of the list, we need to cover the difference between a niche and an industry, okay? So tech, if someone says tech, well, my niche is tech. Tech is not a niche. Tech is an industry, and it is a massive industry. So if you say something like, I'm going to sell bookkeeping services to tech, you have not niched, not even close, because tech is not a niche. Real estate, quote unquote, real estate is not a niche. That is an industry, and it's a huge industry. That's not a niche. Healthcare is not a niche. That is an industry, and it's a massive industry. Matter of fact, every other industry you can think of is under healthcare. Construction, tech, legal, right? All those are under healthcare. So a lot of times guys will think that they have uncovered a niche or narrowed down to a niche when in fact they've just selected an industry. Industries are not niches. So let's go back and rewind. So tech is not a niche. Let me tell you what is a niche. A business that I ran for many, many years until the cerveza sickness hit and I closed it down, which is okay because I've replaced it with something that's better. I, for many years, ran a business where I did marketing services, commission marketing services, percentage of improvement services for on-site IT companies. Okay, so that was in tech, but it was a very narrow niche inside tech. I did not sell to programmers. I did not sell to developers. I did not sell to web guys because I had these people ask for my business. Hey, could you please hire me? We don't do on-site services, but we build servers. Or we don't do on-site services, but we build websites. I said no. No, because that wasn't in my niche. My niche was consultants who are what I used to be. A consultant who a company hires and goes out on site to fix problems with their network or their software. On-site networking consultants or on-site system consultants. And that was the niche that I focused on, and I didn't focus on anybody else. That's a niche. Do you see the difference between that and saying tech? Not even consulting. Consulting is not really a niche. Consulting is an industry. What kind of consultant or what sector of consultant? I was dealing with on-site tech consultants, not tech and not consulting, but on-site tech consultants. That's a niche, and that's why that business was extremely profitable. Matter of fact, that business, before I close it down, was the most highest margin profitable business I've ever owned. Because not only did we do marketing services, I also licensed sales letters to people in that niche. So I would go to other consultants and I would give them my direct mail sales letters that I know for a fact work, my 3 control letters, and I would license those. They'd pay me thousands of dollars to use those letters over a given 6-month period or a year period, and it was literally infinite margin. All I had to do was press send on an email with some PDFs, and that's all I had to do, and I would get thousands and thousands of dollars. Ridiculously high margins, and I wouldn't be able to do that if I wasn't that micro-niched. If I had these 3 control letters, these direct mail letters, and I just went to any company in the world, I went to a dairy farmer and said, hey, use these letters, you'll get business. And if he asked me what kind of businesses use these letters in the past, and I said IT consulting companies, he'd kick me out of his office, right? So that's how this works. So that's why niching is important. So remember, industries are not niches. I can give you a few more examples because I know this is important. So healthcare, that's an industry. Cardiologists is a niche. My new company is with cardiologists. That's a niche. I don't work with anybody else, just cardiologists. That's all, nobody else. That is a niche. You see the difference between cardiologists and healthcare? See, one's an industry, one's a niche. So when you niche, you don't want to use an industry, you want to use a niche. That is a narrow niche way down deep inside that industry. Same thing with real estate. Real estate is an industry. Residential real estate agents is a niche, right? So if you had a business, and I knew a guy who did this, if you have a business teaching residential real estate agents, commissioned real estate agents, how to make more money, that's great because that's a niche. Commercial real estate agents is a different niche, right? Property management companies is a different niche inside real estate. So there's so many different niches inside real estate because real estate's an industry. So just realize that often you may think you have a niche when in fact you don't. You have an industry, and you don't want an industry. An industry is not a niche. Now the next problem I see is the identical problem I just said, except for B2C instead of B2B. So what I just mentioned are some B2B examples in most cases. A B2C example would be, for example, guys will say, well, my niche is men age 25 to 45 who want to live a more free life. That's not a niche. That's a demographic. So I'll get that. That's a demographic. That is not a niche, right? That's not a niche. The niche that I appeal to are guys in the sovereign CEO business, people who want to move out of their collapsing Western country. That's a niche. Is that most people? No. Is that a lot of people? No, it's a pretty narrow niche. Most people don't want to move out of the United States or Canada or Europe or Australia. Even if they bitch and moan about it, they don't want to leave the country, right? It's a very narrow niche. In Alpha Male 2.0, what is my niche over there? Men between the age of 25 and 45 who are unmarried and don't need monogamy. That's basically the Alpha Male 2.0 niche. Now, are there guys outside of those age ranges who like my stuff? Absolutely. Are there guys inside that age range who love monogamy? Absolutely, but those are the exceptions. So is that a demographic? Is that a huge demographic of people? No, most men like monogamy, at least eventually, right? Right, so that's a niche. I've heard guys say things like, my niche is gamers. Gamers is not a niche. Gamers is a demographic. That's huge. How many guys under the age of 40 don't like playing video games, right? Even I play video games occasionally, not often these days, but occasionally. I love it. So that's a demographic. So that's the same thing as an industry versus a niche. Instead of having a demographic like, my niche is women. I've talked to women about this. My niche is women. Women who want to be empowered. Not a niche. Women is not a niche. That's a demographic, and it's a huge one. Even black people. Black people is not a niche. Black people is a massive demographic. You need to narrow down that further. The example I've used is guys who start a company and they want to, teach men how to lose weight. What would be better is I teach men, and this sounds funny, but this is true. I teach Asian men or maybe Chinese men over the age of 50 on how to gain muscle mass. You see how niche that is? Not men, not even Asian men. It's men, Asian men over 50. Now you've got a niche, right? And it's Asian men over 50 who want to get jacked. Not Asian men over 50 who want to lose weight, but men who want to get jacked. See the difference? So that's niching not only the market, that's also niching the offering. And I'll talk about that a little later, because there's two ways in which you niche. You can niche the offering, or you can niche the market, or you can niche both. And sometimes you only need to niche the market, sometimes you only need to niche the offering. It really depends what you're doing. Be aware that sometimes you're going after a demographic, like, men in their 40s who want to improve their time management. Is that a niche? No, it's not. That's not a niche. I'm sorry, it's not. It sounds like a niche, but it's not. That's a demographic. So you need to further narrow that down. Let's say instead you said, my niche is men over the age of 40 who own construction companies who are stressed out and want to manage their time better. Now you got a niche. See the difference? Big difference, huh? Right, that's a niche. Okay. The next thing that I see a lot of guys do is that they don't match the problem to the niche. So what I talk about in my materials is that you find a narrow niche and then you identify as best you can the biggest problem, or at least one of the top 3 problems that niche has, and then your product, service, or information addresses that problem, okay? That's the short way to make a lot of money very quickly. Identify a narrow niche, identify a serious problem that they have, something they bitch about and complain about all the fucking time, and introduce a product, information, or service, whichever one you like the best, that helps solve or alleviate that problem. Boom, that is a money-making business every time, unless you literally don't do any marketing, which is stupid. Marketing is the most important function of a company. Topic for another time. But what I see some guys do is that they misalign the problem to the niche. I talked to a guy a little while ago who said, my niche is men who are gamers who want to lose weight. Now, let me ask you a question. Picture the typical gamer. Be honest now. Is this a guy concerned about his weight? No. Is a typical gamer, while he's playing Fortnite, is he thinking, you know what? Boy, am I fat. I need to start, get on that treadmill. I need to start losing weight and looking good. Is that the big priority of a gamer? No. So that is misaligning the niche, which again, gamers isn't even a niche, misaligning the niche to the problem that niche has. Here's another example I've heard. Caleb, my niche are college students who want to organize their finances better. Now again, picture the typical college student. He's spending all his fucking time either doing homework or in class or getting drunk with his buddies on the weekends, right? That's the typical college student. Do you think that guy is really concerned about paying off his debt and organizing his bookkeeping and organizing his checkbook? And no, that is the last fucking thing on his mind. So what you're doing is you are identifying a problem that you know you can help someone with, and you're trying to find a niche somewhere that you can identify with and mashing the niche to the problem. That's not how the process works. You identify the niche, then you identify that problem. That's it. You don't come up with a problem you're good at solving and then look around for a niche and try to shove that problem on that niche. Sometimes that works, usually that doesn't work. I worked with a guy several years ago, great guy, really good guy, and he was doing a business where he was helping, let's see, if I remember right, it was independent filmmakers. Now here's the problem. Do independent filmmakers have a lot of money to spend on services? No. So he's going after a niche with very little money. So that's another issue. So you have to look at the niche and make sure the niche is able to purchase what you want and make sure they are motivated enough to purchase what you want, which means they have a real problem that they have, not a problem you're trying to project on them. I once worked with a guy who was an ergonomics expert, a workplace ergonomics expert. And he would come in and show you how to adjust your desk and adjust your monitor and adjust your keyboard, and so you wouldn't get carpal tunnel. And his pitch to his clients or his prospects would be, hey, I'm gonna save you money in workman comps claims and pissed off employees, and I'm gonna raise efficiency. And it was good business, good, very niched offering, very, very good. The problem is he was approaching banks, sometimes big banks, and he was confused that the banks never hired him. And I said, dude, banks are old school white hair type businesses. These are old traditional businesses. Do you think a big traditional bank gives a rat fuck about ergonomics in the fucking workplace? No. I said, what you should be doing is hitting up, big left-wing cities like San Francisco and going after the more granola type companies like green tech companies, startup companies, cool left-wing millennial type companies. They're all over that shit. And that's exactly what he did. And as soon as he took my advice, he got 2 big clients and made a lot of money because he was misaligning the problem to the niche. He thought, well, I have this skill set. I can help people with their ergonomics. Banks have a lot of money, so I'll go after banks and I'll try to convince banks they have this problem. No, that is the opposite on how you should start a business. And by the way, let me reiterate, that's how most business owners start their business. Most business owners are good at a thing or really like a thing, and they try to shove it onto the marketplace. That's stupid. In every business that I have started, with the exception of my very first business, when I was young, I didn't know these things. But every other business I've started, I did the opposite. I identified a niche. I identified a serious problem that niche had that was really bothering that niche, and I came up with a solution, usually through services and or information, because I tend to be more information services guy than a hard products guy, that helped alleviate or solve the problem of that niche. I did it in IT consulting. I've done it in healthcare. I've done it with online dating and dating for men on the internet. I'm doing it now with men who want to move out of their countries. Every business I have started was following that model. As usual, I practice what I preach. I identified a narrow niche, identified a problem with that niche, and I did something to solve that problem. In my cardiology business, which I really don't like talking about publicly because it's a little complicated, I've done the same thing. I've identified a niche, cardiologists. There's a very specific problem cardiologists have, well, not all of them, but most of them, and I'm doing something, I'm offering something that directly addresses this problem. I plan on making more money in that business than my other 2 businesses currently combined, long term. And I probably will, because I'm following my own advice. Now notice, I didn't wake up one day and say, I like to write fantasy fiction, so I'm going to teach people how to write fantasy fiction, because I like writing fantasy fiction. Right? No, I didn't do that. I didn't take my skill set and my desires and try to shove them on top of a niche. Now, what I did do with my Black Dragon business is that I was getting very good at online dating. Back in an era around 2007, 2008, 2009, when online dating was a niche. Today, online dating is not a niche, it's an industry, but back then it was a niche. And I started getting good at that, and I saw lots of guys be interested in this and doing it wrong. And so I said, aha, there's a problem I can fix. And that's where Black Dragon was born back in 2009. Worked out pretty well for me. And then, as I've talked about before, I listened to my audience and I listened to the things they were talking about and the things they were complaining about, the things they were having trouble with. And within a year or 2 of me starting that business, I saw a lot of guys, older men my age, men well over age 35, complaining about how they wanted to date younger women and how they didn't know how to do it, or they would try to date a younger woman and they'd screw it up. So I went, aha. So I wrote a 3rd book. I had a dating book at that point, an online dating book, and then I had a small coaching service. I added a 3rd book called The Ultimate Younger Woman Manual, which I have updated since then and is now a full-blown video course. And I offered that to my audience, and I did very well with that. I didn't sit and say, I'm good at dating younger girls, so I'm going to tell men to date younger girls and help them with that. I didn't do that. I watched what the niche wanted, and I knew it was something I could help because I had a decent amount of experience at that point dating much younger women. Now, let me talk about niching your offering versus niching your marketplace, because sometimes if you have a narrow enough offering, you don't need to worry about niching the marketplace. I worked with a guy years ago who manufactured a very specific type of custom microscope. Okay, that was his offering, that was his service. Do you think he had to find a narrow niche? No, he didn't have to find a narrow niche because what he was doing was so narrow already. All he needed to do was to find those few types of companies or industries or hospitals or what have you, I don't remember what they were, that could use that type of microscope. And it was a rare, unusual enough microscope where he was cool with not having to niche his audience because the audience kind of niched themselves. So sometimes if you offer something that is very narrow, a very narrow, unusual service, a very narrow, unusual product, a very narrow, weird, unusual piece of information that does help someone or helps a type of person or type of company, often you don't have to worry about finding a niche because what you're offering is already so niched. For example, I didn't do this necessarily, but in a way I've done this with my Alpha Male 2.0 stuff. I talk about non-monogamy, long-term, happy, non-monogamous relationships where you're dating multiple people or having sex with multiple people. And so in a way, the audience filters themselves. If you're a hardcore, diehard, right-wing Christian conservative and you just love the Bible and monogamy is perfect and you're going to immediately discount my information. You're not going to go anywhere near my information. If you're already kind of have been exposed to non-monogamy, or you've already kind of thought about this already, you're going to be naturally attracted to my information. I don't necessarily have to go grab you. By the way, that was me. Years ago, I think I've told this story, when I first found the pickup artist world back in 2007, 2008, somewhere in there, I went on some pickup artist forums, including a very famous one called Fast Seduction. That's one where Mystery and Neil Strauss used to hang out. And I took a look at it and I said, these are, and I was an older guy at that point. I was, 36, 37 years old. I'm like, these are a bunch of young guys going to clubs and this is kind of silly. And they wear feather boas and goggles and stupid. This is a bunch of weirdos. I'm getting the hell out of here. But on my way out, I saw a little thing that said MLTR. I said, what's that? Multiple long-term relationships, dating multiple women at the same time, and they all know they're dating each other, and they stay with you anyway. That was a fantasy I had had for many years. I was already interested in that, so I immediately dived into that part of that world and built an entire business on it. See, so notice they got me. They didn't have to convince me about non-monogamy. I was already mentally there. Okay, so if you have a very narrow niched offering, you often don't need to niche the marketplace. Now, most of you probably don't have a very unusual narrow skill set or very unusual narrow interest, and that's fine. That means you're going to have to niche the marketplace. Unfortunately, you're going to have to do that. If you're a really good bookkeeper or an accountant, that's great. That's not super narrow. So you're going to have to go find a narrow niche and offer those services to that niche. Okay, which is fine. This is a very important topic, and if you guys have more questions on this, certainly let me know. I am more than happy to do another podcast on this, more niching techniques. Certainly you can go to my website, calebjones.com. I have courses on there on how to narrow down a niche. I've got podcasts on this. I have the SMIC program at joinsmic.com where we talk about this. Lots of resources for you, but certainly if you want more information on this, let me know and I will give it to you. I will see you in the next podcast. Have fun. Bye.